What would you look like without this beard that you have?
Probably not old enough to drink. Yeah, it's a little bit of a baby face. Just the hair on top is missing, so it kind of ages me. My name's Bill Petrinczyk, known as Unbroken Rhino. It's a moniker that was kind of bestowed upon me when I got injured a little over 7 years ago at this point. Right now we're in Robert Wood Johnson and Carteret for their 8-year anniversary, sitting in a cycle room, which is foreign to me. Usually I'm outside pulling trucks and moving rocks. Yeah, I'm here supporting my brother. He's the assistant personal training manager here. He's actually been instrumental in me actually getting back to functioning like a normal person. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you have a major accident like I did, and you're in a wheelchair for 11 months, trying to figure out what a normal, I guess you could say, is a little bit difficult. And weight training's always been part of my life, so it was definitely instrumental in me getting healthy and getting back and doing the things that I love to do, which is pretty much training and moving heavy weights.
So my brother is Bill Petrinczyk. He's also known as the Unbroken Rhino. For lack of a better term, he's probably the most hardcore, determined athlete I've ever known. He is currently the 2-time defending North American strongest disabled man. I believe he's the first person to hold the title back-to-back. He's competed in Worlds in Norway for World's Strongest Disabled Man, and he's been doing it for only about 3 years now. And I gotta say, he's probably the strongest pound-for-pound guy I know.
All right, first event is the axle for reps. So right now we're getting ready for the seated one class to get going, which is I'm in. It's an open class for strongmen that have an ability not to stand on their own or have problems doing so. So it's for reps. I'm hoping to pull maybe 13, 14. We'll see where it goes. It's about 220 pounds we're doing today.
Talk about your accident and what made you disabled. I got your brother's point of view. I want your point of view. Set the scene, and then also what was going through your mind and just how it affected you.
Well, funny enough, I was working at the Bayway Refinery in Linden. I just come off of over a year of really strenuous work and 16-hour days, 20 plus days in a row, easily, with almost no days off. And I had just come back from the Arnold, and I actually contracted food poisoning, and I was pretty sick for the better part of a day.
He basically was throwing up just nonstop. He got dehydrated from it. Happened one day, next day he was okay. He tried doing some housework, he blacked out from dehydrating, and he cracked the front of his head on a metal end table in his living room.
And come to find out later on that it was actually from severe dehydration. So when I got to that point, my brain had actually shrunk, so when I hit my head, it kind of ping-pong balled in my skull, which wasn't bad. I was still walking fine. I had a slight headache all the time. I did develop migraines. A little bit of memory loss, nothing bad, and I had to wear sunglasses all the time, which, again, wasn't too bad. Problem was, with one of my migraines, I got hit about a month and a half later with one that was severe enough that my meds wouldn't even kick in. And when I stood up to try to walk into the other room, I blacked out and fell backwards.
Fell backward, cracked the back of his head, which screwed up the back of his skull. I think it was his C6, his subox, and pretty much that's what absolutely screwed him up. It gave him severe migraines. His head was pinned to his shoulder. It basically sheared the nerves down his spinal column. His spinal column actually twisted, so it completely screwed everything else up.
Through a lot of trial and error, we found out that I had herniated my T7, my L4, L5, my L5, S1, sustained what they call post-concussive syndrome, which is a big thing now, which is where the symptoms of a concussion actually go way longer than they should. And since I already had one, I had doubled up my brain injury. I developed insomnia, a headache 24/7, body aches, body pains. I also had damage to spinal tracts going from my head to my leg. So I still have nerve damage and muscle damage, my right quad and my right calf. So I ended up with a clonus, which is where your foot shakes if you step on it. But mine goes so bad is I'll actually fall over if I let it keep going. So I actually have to stop, take the pressure off, and kind of like let my body reset. I lost the ability to walk. Fine motor skills were gone. The ability to read was gone. So all those little ins and outs were all, everyday life was destroyed. It didn't exist.
He was such a unique case that even doctors who have studied this stuff have no idea what was wrong with him. And they actually made studies just on him. This is before concussion, brain trauma and stuff really started becoming developed. Nobody knew anything about it. So he was actually like the first real case of people studying up on this stuff. So I learned a lot in that time frame, but it was difficult because we had no idea what to do. And even just helping him get around, trying to get him down a hallway was difficult. Ergo, how he got the name Rhino, because one day he was over our house, we were watching National Geographic, and it was a special on rhinos. Found out that rhinos are severely nearsighted, and there was one scene of a baby rhino going down a hallway for its vet checkup, down a bright white hallway for a creature that is nearsighted. So you had 3 vets, technicians trying to push this rhino down the hallway, and he's bumping the walls as he's going forward. Trying to walk with my brother was pretty much the same way. You had a 270-pound muscle-bound rhino with 3 people trying to help him down a hallway as he's bouncing, trying to find where the wall is. And that's how I got the name Rhino from that point forward.
The man, the myth, the rhino.
Back from extinction.
Were they extinct at one point?
Actually, one is, the males of one is.
Wow.
Northern white, I think, is done. Freebies. I'm just packing some goodie bags for GCode for the big day tomorrow.
What do we got? What do we got?
First thing we got is 2 samples of Vice, the best pre-workout in the game. Rise, the absolute best in the game, hands down.
But wait, there's more. You get 2 GCode bracelets, and what's that? A free mini funnel? I think so.
Reloaded and bearing.
Billy Petrinczyk is one of my favorite dudes in terms of members of the GCode family. Just a remarkable dude, an incredible athlete, a guy who's been relentless in his pursuit of strongman excellence. One of the cornerstones of our brand is defiance to circumstance, and I feel like he's the physical manifestation of that. He's the embodiment of that idea of not letting life-altering physical situations stand in the way of his pursuit of excellence on his own terms. And he's just truly one of the more inspiring guys that I know. So positive, super knowledgeable with regard to supplements, with regards to physical culture, strength training in general, and a guy who's given so much to our brand in terms of time. One of the most priceless resources is dedicating your time to something, and there's been so many demos or at the Arnold Classic instances where he's just out of the goodness of his heart and like a true belief in what we do has just dedicated so much time to our efforts because he sincerely believes in them. And that's, you can't put a price tag, you can't put a value on something like that. It's literally priceless.
Come on, up! Up! Triple!
When GCode came around, it was around the time of my first Arnold. I've known the guys for a very long time, so I went in, supported them, and started trying Vice, which was, it's going on 2 years now. And it was the first pre-workout that I could actually take again. It wasn't something that would send me over the top. It wouldn't give me a headache. I mean, I needed a lot of caffeine to keep the headaches at bay. So drinking a lot of coffee was just getting old. So when Vice came out, all of a sudden I'm drinking it, regularly on a daily and not having any ill effects. And it did aid in a lot of recovery because now the beetroot powder that was in there was one thing that I could eliminate from taking as a secondary source. And then when Rise came about, that was something that I started drinking by the gallon. I mean, 80 ounces a day was no joke for me. I mean, and it did help me recover because going to therapy 3 times a week plus weight training plus just everyday day-to-day stuff would wear me down. And this was something that would keep me going as I would continue to try to get better and better and stronger.
I just love it because it's made by a group of guys who stand by their word, and they treat everybody who respects them as family, and I truly respect that by them. It's not just these big corporations though who will put 1,000 things outside the biggest name athletes and not give a crap about average Joe Blow who has to work 6 days a week for their job, get to the gym where they can. They do it because these are the people who want to give it out there and they want to be able to enjoy it. And I really respect the guys for that because they started this from the ground up. They just celebrated their 2-year anniversary, and hopefully it's only 2 years out of another 100 for these guys.
Don't die. That's the biggest trick. Lift the weight that scares the ever-loving shit out of you and move it or die. That's pretty much it.
I take a lot of lines from military vets that I've had the pleasure of meeting and competing against, and what they say is true is you're not disabled, you adapt. So we are adaptive athletes. Anything that you think there's a problem, you can adapt around and do.
Ultimately, right, we all have to adapt to our environment, our surroundings, our situation, right, and do our best to thrive in those circumstances, and he's that guy. Whenever I introduce him to anybody or talk about him in any way, shape, or form, I just say, oh yeah, he's one of the world's strongest men. One of the strongest athletes in the world. He's a strongman. I never refer to any sort of disability or anything in that regard. He's a fucking tank of a dude.
Up, 1. Come on, 2. Up, 3. Come on, push. 4.
I had 3 choices: paraplegic, quadriplegic, or dead. And I chose choice 4, which is we don't know how much is wrong with you, so we're going to figure it out as we go. One thing my neurologist told me, my therapist told me, was that a nerve regrows at 1 millimeter a month under the best conditions. So if you think at how small that is and how much damage I've had done to myself, that's a long time to try to figure out when I'm going to get back to where I was. I might not ever, but I'm never going to stop trying to get as close to that as I can. And even with what I've done, I've been able to adapt around becoming one of the strongest guys that sits down. I compete seated because I do have balance issues, but if I could stand up and compete as a disabled athlete, I would. But I can't run back and forth. That's just not in the cards right now. But it's just something that, everybody can do. There's no real excuse. I've seen people who have severe cerebral palsy pull pickup trucks. And I'm talking people who can't stand, they're in a wheelchair, they barely have enough, energy or the ability to get up and move into an apparatus, but they're still out there doing it because there is no excuse. You can get up and do something.